still very much, as you can see, a work in progress. Our everything is true. Our official opening is going to be February 27th and 28th, which is going to be the commemoration of Joe. So there's still a lot of work on this building that has to be done. Our contractor has been working away. You know, we learned the little kinks and little hiccups in the building and working those out along the way. So, you know, it's functional, but we're still trying to bring it up to our vision. So we want to welcome you to the space and hope you continue to join us. So just a few housekeeping things. There are 2 bathrooms that are fully functional. There's the ones that are back on the back end. So if you go out on the back end, there are 2 bathrooms for anybody who needs it. You know, make sure you're going back. There's plenty of food. We don't want anything left. Y'all make sure y'all eat well. Take some home if you need to. And call and invite some other folks who might be a little bit afraid of the cold and figure we ain't feed nobody. Tell them we got some food. They can come on out the house for it. So just a couple of things. This event is being live streamed. Thanks to some of the support being given to us by our tech crew from the NPC, the National Planning Committee, the U.S. Social Forum, which is here, meeting with us for a planning meeting for the U.S. Social Forum that we're going to be having here in Jackson in June 24th through 28th. So mark that down on your calendars. So we want folks to know that, which means try to walk around the man here in the red. All right? Don't walk in front of him. Walk around so folks can kind of check it out. And anybody who does not really want to be on camera, we understand some folks, you know, don't want to be on camera, just kind of raise your hand, or you know, we're fine, or you got to position yourself at an angle where you're not in the camera. All right, but there is some video documentation as well as going on with the day. A few quick things just to let everybody know. This is kind of not kind of, it is a joint project between the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement Cooperation Jackson, the National Planning Committee, U.S. Social Forum, and the Rosa Luxemburg Smith Fund from New York City. Right? And so we want y'all to give everybody kind of a round of applause. And this, one of the things we've been telling folks in terms of this is not a conference, so please don't look at it this way. It's more of a strategic conversation, one of many that we need to have kind of throughout the region and nationally. So this is an assembly. Part of what we want to do with these assemblies is come up with our best ideas and then back those ideas up with concrete action plans, and then further put our feet to the ground and do some implementation of what we said we're going to do. So keep that in mind as we are thinking about this. The subject that we're taking on tonight, the struggle for economic democracy, you know, that's a long, hard fight. So it's not like we're going to figure it out in 5 minutes and then implement it in 10. It's not really going to work like that. Unfortunately, we wish it would, but it's not going to work like that. So we want to think through it. We've asked a couple of folks to get us started
to think through it, particularly what that has looked like, some of those struggles are looking like currently and historically, and what the thread is here in Mississippi. But there are a couple of
basically nine questions
that we're going to be looking for.
So if you look around, there are questions and there's definitions up. So part of, in addition to asking folks to share their perspective and history, we're asking them to address, particularly tonight, these first 4 questions. I'll read them all. We're going to be then sometime tomorrow just to go through, this is a 2-day piece, this first discussion circle. We're asking all of you and those who continue to be joining us to also discuss those questions. Put your best ideas forward. We'll chart them down, write them down. We're going to do a synthesis and present that back to each other from the discussion groups so we can build on, challenge each other, and come up with some action plans, right? So keep that in mind, which means that there's a certain level of hearing some of our sharpest ideas, but this is not a lecture to be lectured at. We encourage and basically going to ask and demand all of you to participate. So just think about that, all right? Because some people here will call you out We got some facilitators who are good for that, and they got innovative ways of making them talk. So the first four pieces before we get into just break it down and get to the speakers. So the first one we really want to look at, what is economic democracy? Why don't we have economic democracy in this country? Who are the forces opposed to it? What are they interested in opposing and eliminating from happening? And then this one moves us into the practical piece, is how can we attain it, right, in our workplaces, in our communities, in society in general. So we're asking them to address that. We're asking all of you to think about that and for you to address it. Okay, so that's our first task for this evening and for tomorrow. So without further ado, 4 of our 5 are here, and we're going to kind of go down the line. First up is Jared. No, we're going to start on this end and go down this end. He's got to go. So we're going to start with Brother Derek Johnson, who's one of our state leaders here in Mississippi, with the NAACP, but also with One Voice, Mississippi One Voice. Then we're going to go down with Brother Ben Burkett, who's the leader here with the Mississippi Association of Cooperatives. And Melba Smith, also a leader with MAC, and formerly with, am I speaking correctly? Let it go. You still with the Coalition for Prosperous Mississippi? Okay. Coalition for Prosperous Mississippi and the Mississippi Association of Cooperatives. And then we're going to have Kia Omobola speak on behalf of Cooperation in Jackson, and then Chokwe Antar Lumumba on behalf of the Democratic Strategy. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Derek.
So good evening. You know, when I look at the board, and the question is, what is economic democracy? There's a Webster dictionary definition for it, but it's the live definition for it. And many in this room would automatically say worker cooperative would be an example of economic democracy, or cooperatives in general. But the truth be told, cooperatives could be undemocratic. And they are undemocratic in many parts of this country. When you look at water cooperatives, electric cooperatives, and other forms of cooperatives, it was created with the intent of allowing people to have a voice in that mode of production, whatever that production was. But over time, when people no longer engage and understand their role and their responsibility, even the purest form of economic democracy, like a worker cooperative, can become very undemocratic. And so we have to be careful with notions of there is something that's better over there, when in fact, economic democracy for me is when the people have a direct voice in the mode of production and the generation of wealth that is evenly spread across to impact 3 primary groups for me. Ensuring our young people are properly trained and educated. Ensuring our elderly are cared for and protected. And ensure that we protect the rights of the disadvantaged, however we define the disadvantage. Because over time, any system that's ran by man can be corrupted. And so as some of us have studied cooperative movements in Montreal and looked at what is taking place with Evergreen Cooperative, I'm always cautious to, when I take a look at those things, to recognize that even some of the purest form of cooperative in their inception can be and have been corrupted over time. So we're in the city of Jackson, a city that's approaching 80% African American, a city that elected the most progressive mayor in this country during this decade, perhaps this century, a city that in many ways, like many larger cities, controlled a lot of its natural resources like the water. And anytime we have the citizens truly participate, not just 42% of the citizens vote or 38% of the citizens vote, or we'll say it's a good election with 55% of the citizens vote, when the citizens truly participate, and they participate in a way in which they determine how public policy will impact their lives, that is also a form of economic democracy. But what has happened in this country over time and in this city is that we confuse the question of capitalism and democracy, and we think they're the same thing. And they're not. And what has happened to African Americans in this state and across this country, and many working poor whites and other groups, we don't engage and we allow capital to overshadow democracy. And when capital weakens democracy, people lose. The real question around economic democracy is how do we increase our democracy by increasing participation so we can put capital in check and make capital accountable to the needs and interests of our communities. So for me, economic democracy is however we define it, so long as people are put before profit.
Thank you.
I'd like to say good evening to everyone again. Johnson hit the nail on the head. My name is Ben Burkett. I'm with the Federation of Southern Cooperative Land Assistance Fund. We are a cooperative of cooperatives. In the state of Mississippi, we currently have 22 cooperatives. And the purpose of organizing those cooperatives, basically our cooperatives, was to control their own destiny in their own rural areas. This organization here is a member of our Federation of Southern Cooperatives now, and the only one we have in an urban setting at the present time. But as Johnson was stating, you have to participate. You have to play your part in the cooperative for the cooperative to be successful. Not only cooperative, the economic development of any community. You have to be involved in it. What I think about is back, those of us old enough to know pre-segregation in the state of Mississippi, how it was. We had a thriving Ferry Street. We had a thriving Mobile Street in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Other streets in Mobile, Alabama. What happened? If you look at Ferry Street today, somehow or another we decided it's best to leave what we had. So how we participate? We have to support those businesses that support what we are involved in. You know, this city, there says 80% black. We ought to be controlling 80% of the money. Everything in this city ought to be 80%. You had 80% controlling very few. So how you could answer these four questions? How you could create something new, something different? You go out and you build a whole different thing. You forget about what was already prepared. Create something new. But again, you have to do that. I can't come in from 100 miles away. I'm a farmer by trade. That's all I ever did for 62 years. I'm 62 years old, so I've been farming 62 years. I never played football, basketball. I don't care nothing about sport. I don't care nothing about car racing. They but one thing. So how do you produce, consume, and survive? So you have to develop a system of everything that's touched your life, you're participating in. What I'm saying is there is that for the young people, we have a good tradition in the state of Mississippi. We educate them well, and when they get an education, like my great nephew just got a degree from Mississippi State University in electrical engineering. He's on the phone today for Houston, Texas. We need to create stuff like that. Young people to stay in the state of Mississippi. That's the best talent we have. So it's up to us to come up with a system. And I think we can do it. As Carly said, we got to create recycling. education, food production within our own community. And I'm gonna close with this: control of food. Food is being controlled by very few people in this country. You know, most of y'all are assuming that when you go buy food, you buy it from the supermarket, maybe Whole Foods.
Maybe.
Or whole paycheck. Whole paycheck. That's all of my customers. I got to talk. Can't say too much about it. We won't tell. So we have to take back that. We have to take back control to our own. We have to control it. If you don't control anything, somebody else supplying your food, your water, your clothing, everything you need, what did you got? So we have to produce our own, consume our own, complete that circle. And it begins here. Begin with the garden we're going to go behind this building here. We think we can produce enough to feed 1,000 people out in this spot. And then we have to get all the other people in this community, in this state. We got to be involved in what we want to do and what we're trying to do. And the Federation is an old organization, 45 years old, with a long and historic history of being able to provide that service, that leadership, and bringing people together. Thank you.
So hello everyone.
Hello.
My name is Melba Smith, as Carly has said, and I don't reside in the city of Jackson, but I worked in the city of Jackson for a number of years, and live in that county up next to it, you know, right across the river. So I was born in that county, by the way. But I'm just happy to be here and to talk about my experiences in terms of economic democracy. I was indoctrinated with cooperatives when I was 20-some years old, and I have been working with cooperatives for over 40 years, so that doesn't date me, but it gives you a clue to how long I've been around. And I told my family this last Christmas holidays when we all met together in Atlanta that I'm the matriarch of the family. And they said, how did you get to be the matriarch of the family? I said, I appointed myself. So tonight, I'm the matriarch tonight to talk about experiences for 40 years. And I'm going to try to do that in the same number of minutes that they took. But it might take me a little longer. But I think my topic that I was supposed to talk about is talk about cooperatives in the state of Mississippi, and a little bit about the history of those, and to talk about something that we're doing through the legislative process in order to open that opportunity for other people in other sectors of the community. So I found in doing some research, and I was not born in 1935 or 1933, but I also found out in 1936 and in 1939 there were two cooperatives that were formed in Mississippi. And one was called the Delta Farm Cooperative in the community of Hill House Community, and I don't even know where that is in Mississippi, but it's in Bolivar County. And there was another one called Providence Cooperative Farm, started in 1939 in Kruger in Holmes County, Mississippi. And they were brought together by a group called Cooperative Farms Incorporated, which was a philanthropic group that supported cooperatives, and they came into Mississippi and helped to organize these cooperatives, and these were agricultural cooperatives. And they were organized around four principles: efficiency in production and economy in finance, and through cooperative principles. And we've been talking about those cooperative principles today, and you will see one in action when I say a little bit more about this. The second was participation in building a socialized economy of abundance, and interracial justice, and a realistic religion as a dynamic social force. So they were organized around that. And to this end, the cooperatives were to pay African Americans and whites equal wages for their work and provide social and other services, and some to the surrounding community. So this was, I didn't realize the history of cooperatives went back to 1939 and 36. I thought 1944, when the Farm Service Administration came into communities and began to work and organize cooperatives for sharecroppers. And one of those were the Milestone Cooperative Association, also in Holmes County, Mississippi, organized in 1944. And it was a group of farmers, and some of you heard me talk about this already before, a group of about 50 farmers who were cotton farmers. And they were attempting to gin their cotton down the street with not a cotton gin that they owned, but the other people owned it. But as in most cases during those times, we were the last to be seen or the last to be serviced or not serviced at all. So these farmers had their trailers, which were to be used to pick their cotton and put it in trailers and bring it in to be ginned. But because they were the last ones to be seen, they were unable to get their cotton out of the field before the rain set in, so they lost that economic advantage, right? And this to me is what brings about people who want to form cooperatives. They are experiencing a problem or a situation that they themselves have an inward ability to solve, to come together and work with other people to solve it. People with commonalities. People, I say, of like minds who come together. This is what I think. This is the matriarch now working in me, okay? This is what I believe over the years that I've worked in cooperatives, for cooperatives to work. Cooperatives can work. Like Derek said, they're not always working by advantage, because there's an evil one that gets in there and destroys what you're trying to do and gets you off of that vision where you're trying to go. Cooperatives is about vision. It's seeing things that be not as though they were and going to get there. You see what I'm talking about? I'm talking something here. I'm the matriarch. I'm talking about something here. It's a vision. It's people with common interests wanting to work with. And let me say one other thing. It's love in there, and it's a spirituality in there. It may not be Christian. You want to call it Christianity. You may call it the higher one or whatever we call that part of us. But it's the love you have for your brothers and your sisters that you don't want to go anywhere that they're not going with you. You see what I'm talking about? And so over the years, cooperatives do work, but you must work them the way they were set up to work. And the people who set them up had that vision within them and had that spirituality in them and had those cooperative principles. Cooperation among cooperatives, continuing education, constant expansion. These people here, after they were organized, look what they had. These services were included with them. They had a cooperative store, they had a medical clinic, they had a credit union, they had a library, they had a community building, they had religious services, they had educational programs, summer work camp, and community institute. They didn't just stop with that first goal, vision they had. They expanded. That's what co-ops do. They don't stay with one thing and say, and after a while people get tired of it and don't want to keep going, but they expand and keep the interest of their members. They look out for each other. Oh my. Oh my. So after those groups, and then after Milestone in 1944 was one of those groups, there were one in North Bolivar, in Bolivar County again, over in Arkansas. These were cotton gins. And then there was, back when Beam was talking about in 1967, when the Federation came to, because one of the reasons that the cooperatives disbanded and no longer existed was of racism, first of all, because people didn't want these guys working together. these were not just African American, but they were other people too, working together in this cooperative because they were sharecroppers. They were people who didn't own the land, but worked the land. So they didn't want that. But another thing that's critical to cooperatives, and I'm going to start talking in a minute. There's another thing that was critical to cooperatives is education. Education, not always the formal education that you get by going to school, going to universities and everything, or even going to the 8th grade. I guess my father went to. He's the most educated man I knew. But anyway, it's the education on what cooperatives. This group came in to organize these cooperatives and help them, and they did do a good service. But they didn't put all the ingredients in to make them successful and to sustain themselves. You see what I'm talking about? Sustainability. When you're rooted and grounded in something, hey, all you gotta do is keep watering it. Just keep watering it. It'll grow. Just keep watering it. I got a tree at my house. It's over 100 years old. Just keep watering it. But they didn't provide that educational balance on why we have this cooperative. Not that we are coming down here to help you, which is okay. We need outside help. Come down to help you and get you going. But why are we doing this? And when we leave, can you sustain yourself? You see what I'm talking about? So I'm going on to finish now. And then Mississippi in in the late 60s supported more cooperatives than any other southern state. I didn't know that. I didn't know what co-ops were then. But anyway, they did. And one other one that was right here in Jackson, colleague, it was right here in Jackson, was Liberty House. And it was a handicraft cooperative on Ferry Street. And it was a cooperative of handicraft people throughout the state that were making handicraft items, dolls, jewelry, other kind of pot holders, or whatever you may want to call. But there was the ability inside of them to create something and not have to tell somebody, you can work for me, but they were working for themselves. And they were marketing outside the state of Mississippi. And those things that they couldn't sell right away, they opened a business here on Ferry Street, our famous street in Jackson. And for those who are not familiar, it's famous. But anyway, they opened a Liberty House. It was called Liberty House, and they sold things from there. Then we had a supermarket in Greenwood, Mississippi. Believe it or not, we had a cooperative supermarket, the only one in the state, cooperatively owned, and it was huge. Had a lot of members. I can't remember, more than 300 or more that were members of the cooperative. But then it's being said, I'm coming to a conclusion, it's being said that the Federation of Southern Cooperatives came from out of Louisiana, really organized there, but began to work in these southern states and begin to do what? The things that were missing. Educate us on how cooperatives work, the benefits of cooperatives, and how you can sustain yourself. So that was a really good thing. And so I just happened to have been working for them, and I went to one training. This is my last statement, okay? One training, and you had to be trained for 2 weeks when you started to work with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. You had to sit in class every day and learn all about cooperatives. And the word they used was indoctrination, and I hated it. I said, I don't want to be indoctrinated. That's what the white people do to us. Sorry, y'all. But it's true. But it's good if it's used good because I've learned something. And let me tell you now, I've learned how to cooperate with other people. And that's the benefit. I learned to cooperate with my family. I learned how to teach them that. I'm teaching.
I apologize. I have to stand so I can see your faces. Economic democracy. Democracy, democratic, politician. We just had a State of the Union address the other night that talked about the wonderfulness of the state of the country. Not, right? Not, as was so eloquently talked about yesterday. When we talk about economic democracy, we're talking about freeing ourselves from the chains that have kept us bound for lifetimes. I tell the story to many of you, and many of you have heard it, of how I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, born 1955. My parents were activists. They helped elect the first black mayor of the larger city, Carl Stokes in Cleveland. Carried my first picket sign when I was 9. Ended up a long way, came to Jackson, got tricked into coming to this city. Ended up working for.
Why don't you look my way?
Ended up working for someone's dad on a media campaign, and we found out we had to have an opportunity of pepping up the troops, and so I had to do a research of Jackson to help stimulate some folks so I knew what I was talking about. I had no clue where I was. I knew, but I didn't know. You know, I had heard of Mississippi growing up, but I realized not where I was. The thing that we have to understand when we talk about economic democracy, when we talk about cooperatives, when we talk about making a change and moving forward, when we talk about banding together and pulling our resources and our energy and our love together, remember what ground you stand on today. Remember what happened here that set the pace for the world, not just the country, but for the world. And guess what? It is being done again. I don't know how many of you feel the energy in this place. I'm talking about Jackson, Mississippi, that is different from any other place that you have gone to recently. The energy is rising. People are beginning to understand that we have got to begin to take our lives into our own hands. We cannot allow other people to continue to dictate to us what economics are, what democracy is, what cooperation is. We are beginning to define that for ourselves. And so, Cooperation Jackson walks in those footsteps. We come from a long line of understanding that was established 30, 40 years ago. There was a Jackson Kush plan that came into being that talked about understanding that there is a populace in this country that is predominantly African American, that we should begin to appreciate the land upon which we stand. We should begin to pool our resources and claim ownership of that land and have that land begin to produce for us, to be able to provide for us, that we can nurture it and help it grow as well, that we can be reciprocal and set a model for others that says that we can live off the land can thrive off of us, we can be healthy, wealthy, and wise as we continue our relationship with each other and the land. So Cooperation Jackson came into being. We had a monarchy, what's the feminine side of monarchy? We had a lot of folks setting the lead for us, feminine and masculine energy that set the pace for our understanding that until we come together and we start providing jobs for ourselves, until we begin to create those jobs that are meaningful to the land, to each other, and the world, until we are able to come of accord through consensus and understanding, we don't need no stinking Democratic vote, right? We need to be a consensus. We need to come together in agreement, a direction in which we are going. That's what Cooperation Jackson is here to pick up that mantle and continue moving on it. Now, some people do look at us as being foreigners that have come from other places. And one of the things that I'm proud about is the fact that we have this building that is ours, that is Malcolm X grassroots movement, that is a part of the People's Assembly movement that has been happening here. And it shows that we are serious about what we're doing. We have created a base, and it's a base that sets forth a model, or at least an attempt, to walk in the footsteps of those who have come before us, to set a model in understanding what cooperation is going to be about. Because, babies, if we do not take this thing in our own hands, we're screwed. We are literally screwed. We've been screwed for a long time. Just play the State of the Union back if you didn't hear it. So that's really basically all I have to say. is that I want us, and it's wonderful to see all of us in this room, because it's very difficult getting people to understand when you're trying to get them past the mindset that has been indoctrinated for generations. And so to see all of us come together and to be able to plot and plan and come of accord on the next steps that we are going is a wonderful thing. So I say thank you.
I think I can operate without it. Everybody can hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
And free the land.
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 By any means necessary. I'm Shokwe Antar Lumumba. I'm a member of the Malcolm X grassroots movement, working along with Cooperation Jackson, and I'm an attorney also in the city. And I say that to let you know that I apologize for my tardiness. I was leaving Atala County where I was working for a client, so I'm literally moving from one struggle to the next. All right, so forgive me for that. I don't know that there's much more that I need to say after following this line of panelists who have been very eloquent in their description of what cooperative or economic democracy is and what cooperative business models are. But I'll say this. Look, we live in a state, and when I'm talking about a state, I'm talking about Mississippi, but I'm talking about beyond Mississippi, a mindset, where we have so many with so little, and so few with so much. And so when we talk about economic democracy, in the simplest of forms that I can put it in, it's making the decision to put how the economy will work in the hands of the people, giving them the decision-making power over their own economy. And we have to realize the nexus that exists between all of our issues, right? When my father decided to run for mayor, and he's been mentioned, right? It wasn't just about fixing potholes, right? And sometimes when you go from door to door and you're talking to people about what they're dealing with, whether they're talking about crime or whether you want to talk to them about economic democracy, or whether you want to talk to them about exploitation, or whether you want to talk about human rights, you're inevitably confronted with a brother or sister who says, that's good, but how are you going to fix that pothole in the middle of my street, right? And so that really becomes our goal, right? Our goal becomes moving from or connecting pothole to pothole and community to community. So you understand whether you live in Jackson, whether you live in Detroit, whether you live in Atlanta, wherever you live, you understand why communities that look like yours all have that same pothole. Right? And then what you begin to unveil and uncover is the understanding that what your community shares in common with those other communities is that you lack economic control of your community. You don't make the decisions on when a pothole will be fixed. Right? You don't make a decision on when a certain business will remain in your community, or decide, no matter how profitable or not it is, to move to Madison, Sam's, right? You don't control those things. And so the question then becomes, what avenues do we explore in order to take control of that decision-making process? Right? And so we then begin the discussion about this thing called cooperative economics, building businesses where the people who labor or the people who work them decide how they labor, and what the fruits of their labor will be. They decide when a business that is working for them remains in their community, right? And then you also have to excuse me, I have a bit of a cold as well. But there's a nexus between all of these issues, right? No matter if someone's concern is, the businesses that are leaving their community, or the thing that we've all dealt with, or we've all heard about with Jackson, right? Crime, right? How does crime relate to economic democracy, right? How does that relate, right? Like I said, there's a nexus between these issues. Wherever you find high poverty, you find high crime. Crime isn't unique to Jackson. It's not unique to the black community. Wherever you find high poverty, you find high crime, whether that's in Jackson or whether that's in Palestine, right? And so we have to look for opportunities to create more opportunity, right? And so that's what we're having a discussion about, right? That's in the simplest terms, and I don't think that I really need to go much longer. We can, engage in a dialogue, and that's what I'm looking forward to, and I'm just happy to be on this panel full of wisdom, and I thank my matriarch for imparting all that history and knowledge, because we need to understand that this isn't something that's new, right? It's not new, right? And because it's not new, the opposition to it isn't new as well, right? And so we need to be prepared. We need not to reinvent the wheel in every instance, right? But learn from the things or the objectives or the forces, I see that's one of the questions up there, which have been opposed to economic democracy. Right? We live in a very individualized, capitalist society, right? And corporations can work within that, but the purpose of that is that it's not meant to benefit, the individual in the community, and have them build wealth for themselves, right? Not meant for you to cooperate with one another, right? And so we have to look for those opportunities to do that. Right? So I'm delighted to be here, and I thank y'all very much.
Appreciate your patience. We'd like to turn the mic over to the floor now and see if there's any questions or any comments that might be made.
Is that mic better to get to?
Hey, excuse me. Bring it through here.
I'm so close to the mic right now.
Okay,
Oh,
we have a
there's
floor
mic
mic.
here.
There's a mic right here.
Okay.
We got a floor mic.
She's going to the mic right here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for imparting all of this wisdom and knowledge. My question is basically directed to the farmer, the royal farmer. You mentioned Alabama, Ferris Street. You didn't mention Oklahoma, but I think Oklahoma would be included in the massacre of our business people who were successful in moving forward. I understand why they would destroy black men at that point in time, because what it had been 10 years after Reconstruction, or during Reconstruction, 10 years, it only took 10 years to build Ferris Street, or less than 10 years, 10 years to build the Mecca in Oklahoma. So that's powerful, and that's dangerous. What would we be doing now if all of that hadn't happened? But also, the question is, you are a farmer, so have you considered, are you from Grenada? You're not the farmer from Grenada. Sir? Hattiesburg. Ole Miss last year was given the right to sell, farm cannabis, hemp, and hemp, farm it. Have you cashed in on that in any kind of way?
And if have a petition here to legalize cannabis and hemp in the state of Mississippi, which will bring in megabucks. But since Ole Miss has the key to it now, are we talking territorial?
But you know, it's a long process before we get where a farmer will have the right to grow it legally.
Not to say that you're growing it now.
Right, they have the research. It's been research growing up there for years, but I think eventually it would be a crop that farmers can catch in the state of Mississippi, both hemp and marijuana. But it's going to be several years down the road. And I think you're absolutely right, farmers that want to participate in it need to be preparing for it now. I would like to see it as a program like those tobacco programs where it be controlled. Small farmers would have a part in it. So tobacco farmers, you know, it was against it. You would make $50,000 to $60,000 off of 1 acre. But that was a traditional crop for small farmers in Kentucky. So that's the type of way I would like to see it. And again, the power that be and everything, even in farming now, runs on side. So you might have just one farmer growing it all. Unless we participate and design the program. And that's the way it should be. But you're absolutely right. I look forward to this today.
You know, this cannabis hemp question, you know, the reality when you look at it legislatively, it's not so much a moral question as it is an economic question, right? Because the question that really exists at this point is how do we control that market, right? How do we control that market? And that's really what the issue boils down to, right? And there's a number of markets that are involved, or a number of industries, I'd like to say, that are involved in it, right? One, controlling the growth and distribution and sale of it, but then also the effects of legalizing and decriminalizing, right? Because another industry that we don't always recognize, and pretty much is one of the most bustling industries in this country, is the prison system, right? And so, you know, we've had discussions recently about the prison industrial complex and things like that. But there's a very obvious and upfront economy that the prison system creates, right? And it needs prisoners to keep it functioning, right? That's a crop for it, right? That's a crop for it. Look at everybody that the prison employs. You have the lawyers, right? You have the judges, right? You have the city police. You have the county police. You have the state police. You have the federal police. You have the secret police. You have the secret police who watch the secret police, right? You have the prison guards, right? You have all of these companies that distribute into and out of the prisons that are all involved in that, right? And if you really understood how much the drug trade affects the prison population, they have to account for that. If we legalize it, right, what will be the effects and what will be the drop-off? See, we can talk about crime don't pay, but crime pays very well, right? It pays very well, and they need to keep people in prison in order to make it happen, right? And so these are the things I think we can have any discussion, but we have to have a broader understanding of any question we have to understand what the opposition is, right? And so that's part of the opposition.
So if anyone has any questions, just step up to that mic.
We'll leave that up there.
As far as hemp goes in the prisons, the only thing I had to say was At one time, hemp funded our prisons. And at what point did hemp quit funding the prisons and become part of the problem that's been turned around? So it's, hemp, technically we don't grow hemp, the sun grows hemp, the rain grows hemp. And if somehow we can turn that back around to where it's not an issue of where it comes from and who's making money off of it, but it becomes an issue of who's going to benefit. It's like the question has just been turned around backward. It's not who's taking advantage of who, but who's benefiting. And that's where they've totally missed the whole question of hemp.
Thank you.
And all other organics, though, I'd say.
Any other questions, comments?
Not all at once.
Well, we have a full day tomorrow. Can someone who is by the agenda read off the agenda for us tomorrow?
Right there. That's right here.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, okay. So I would like to ask everyone to put their thinking caps on. As Kylie had said in the beginning, it was not just a we speak and you listen. It's we're all in this cooperatively, consensually. So I would like to ask all of you to look at the agenda tomorrow, because we will have a plenary in the beginning, and then we're going to be breaking out into sessions. And we're looking for some solutions. We have an able body of people here. So let's get busy.
Yeah. One thing I do want to let folks know is that tomorrow morning we will also have breakfast. So if you're coming and you might be kind of groggy and you might have an empty belly, you can eat while we're having the morning plenary, and we can get right into the discussion.
You got a comment?
I have a curiosity. Dr. Name, economic democracy. My study in college and everything.
Can you come a little closer to the
Yes, my study. We break down the words and everything. We know about the different economic system Brother talked about, and not our political system. But when we get into the word democracy, we heard defined as, you break it down to the Latin, demos and clatis, which means rule of the people, right? When you break the word demos down further, it comes from demogod, which tell you what kind of people, a devil's people, right? And so that was the first question, the language, and did you really define that economic democracy? And the second part was about the farm. That was the first job. Be fruitful, replenish there. That's the first job. You don't do whatever. How do we enlighten and inspire young people to get into that and see that as one of those doctor, lawyer, kind of fields? Which thanks put that down. But that's the basics. We need to get back to the land. Right? How do we get that motive back in?
I'd like to answer the first part and leave the second part to those much wiser than I. I would say that in embracing the word democracy, and I appreciate the explanation and the definition of it, it is taking ownership of that word and transforming it into something that will be beneficial to all of us. I don't think I even need to say anything more than that.
I think you also employ the strategy of educate, motivate, and organize, right? It requires work. It requires educating our young people in an understanding of the no pun intended, but the fruits, that can be taken from getting involved in that, and you have to motivate them in order to see this as a realistic tool and vehicle in order to help build their community, because they see a community just as you see it, right? And so they dislike the same things about their community that you do, right? And so we have to look for creative methods in order to garner their attention, right? No matter what type of organizing you're doing. You're not much of an organizer if you can only organize those people who think like you. right?
Right.
And so that's the part, you know, that really makes you an organizer when you look for the creative ways of grabbing their attention. So that's what we have to look for.
Well, like you said, in the Federation Southern Squad, we have several programs, new and beginning farming programs. At the present time, we don't have one here in Mississippi. We do have one in Louisiana, Florida, and South Carolina for young people. And you don't necessarily have to be young people. Anybody that's been farming less than 5 years, you qualify to be in that program. It's basically a 3-year leadership development program to learn farming. Farming is a career science, applied science, and everything. You make successful out of it. But we do have successful farming now, farming less than 5 acres, full-time farming operation. And then you have this medium size, 400 or 500 acres, and 1,000 acre farm. But just the beginning in the farming business requires capital. That goes back to organizing. So as I said, you got to have community support. You know, the back tractor, the lease land, to get beginning. I would say it take at least $100,000 to $150,000 just to start off.
And
Definitely, it's a big interest now from urban people. Those that stay in the community where I'm here, I say about my great nephew. He grew up doing it. Each time they go, but I have found he will be back.
I was gonna say, and you know, historically, you know, it's happened before. There's a little shout out to my alma mater. You know, I went to Tuskegee University, right? From a little farm from Tuskegee, they were able to inspire a different way of looking at things to the world, right? And so I think we can do that here in Jackson, Mississippi, you know, and take advantage of that urban farming, right? One thing we don't lack is vacant lots, right? We have a lot of potential in order to take advantage of that land and create something that not only can be wealth producing, but can create pride within the community. If you get out there and you're teaching these young folks how to farm, right? How to create things, then they become proud of it. I don't have much of a green thumb. If I put something in the ground and it comes out, I'm pretty excited about it. You know, and I think that they'll be happy.
I'm gonna just say one other thing. I had opportunity to go to Cuba. I don't know how many times over the last 20 years. And farmers there are the most respected profession. How about that? They number doctors, lawyers, everything. Farmer in Cuba is the most respected profession. And they utilize every spot in a city. Like Havana, almost all 60% what's consumed in Havana is grown in Havana. So it can be done without any fertilizer because they couldn't get any anyway. And this whole thing opened up Cuba. I feel for the Cuban people on that. But they have showed that it can be done within the urban city.
My turn?
Yes,
Yeah, sorry.
Good evening. I would like to inquire about the possibility of Cooperation Jackson taking into consideration some of the things that our children tend to do when they're in school. You know, sometimes our kids go to school and get in trouble, right? And I had always thought that it would be not a good idea to keep children out of school and send them to the house to chill out and eat cornflakes all day and chill out and watch TV. If you had something like a farming type environment to encourage them to understand that you eat every day, but you get this from somebody who put some hard work, time, and science to work. And give them a chance to go out there and put that seed in the ground, tote some water to the hole where they put that seed, pick some beans off from the vine,
if something like that was in place in our school communities, you see what I'm saying? It might just, discourage some of the poor behavior that some of our kids, because see, I got a chance to play in a field when I was a kid and play with the bugs and the ants and move a bad bug off of a bush, and tell my uncle, look, this was eating up your plant. And, we stayed all day till the sun was gone. From the time it rose, my uncle kept me and my oldest brother out in the field with him on a regular basis. This was not far into this man, this older man, did this for a little girl and a boy that was a little bit bigger than me. But it was a wonderful experience. And I'm here to say that, just through creativeness, we could probably, help our kids to focus a little bit better because, they might be encouraged to learn the timetables better if they have that sun out there hitting them. Seeing some light and flash over in the distance and wonder, Lord, am I going to get hit? What do I need to do? So I just wanted to put that out there, because that's something, we can provide right here. Have that garden for them to go to instead of sending them to the house. And then we can teach them some humanity, some humbleness in the midst of all of that.
I want to thank you. That's an excellent suggestion. And what I would like you to know is that there's a corner right over there that we would welcome you to come through, to be a part of the Arts and Culture Cooperative and help us get that off the ground. All right, now. Praise God.
Thank you for this panel this evening. I'm going to expand on student partners as well as on the last comment. So if you're looking at someone who grew up in Tanzania, East Africa, or high school and junior high, and so I call it socialism. Of course, in this country, we call it economic democracy. Okay. So in a socialistic world, in a true socialistic world with a true socialistic president, such as President Nyerere, who's passed, we not only went to school, this is high school, mind you, and junior college, we grew our food on the campus and ate it. Now, that would be something I would love to see. You grow the food, they see the connection between what they grow and what's served and what they eat. And then it links everything. And that power, that responsibility, that voice, that victory, with and help. And help.
So to respond to that, for those of you not from Jackson, you go south on 49, there's a school called Pontywood. They're doing that now. They did it even at a greater rate before. I was in Tanzania about 3 years ago. And we was driving through Maasai village and got a flat tire. And all the young people that wasn't in school in the village. And I recognized when we were standing there and they all come up to help, that you had young boys, 9, 10, 11 years old. Probably not in school. When you realize that those young kids probably knew more about agriculture than some of our PhDs. Because they learned from the beginning how to make everything they wear, everything they sleep in, everything they put on, and everything they eat. The unique thing about the United States, we get comfortable with the comforts. So I'm standing there with shoes made from cheap labor, probably from Guatemala, a jacket that was made in a sweatshop somewhere else in South America, and we would look down on those young kids because they wasn't in school. At the end of the day, it is like in this room we're talking to the choir, preaching to the choir. We have to move beyond the concepts of what we're talking about, and then really ask ourselves: Are we ready to give up some of our comforts? No. And do some of the work. No. Because that's the hard part. The easy part is to theorize around the concept. The hard part is to actually do the work. And in most of our communities, a lot of available land. Much of it is cheap to free. Waiting for people to operate collectively and do something. And so, as a person who serves on a lot of panels and go to a lot of conferences, I get weary on the concepts that's being talked about, and I'm looking for people ready to really apply some real effort towards making those concepts become real. So I hope that over the next day that we're talking about applied concept of real work that we can measure over time. Because we have tons of examples. Some of us can go to childhood, some of us go to our travels, some of us can go to our studies or lessons we've learned from other people, but very few of us can go towards our work. And that's where I hope we get to out of this conversation.
But add to the powers to be, will not let you sell to the school. You know, because we work with several school districts over the state of Mississippi and the city of New Orleans. They got gardens on campus, they got greenhouses, but they cannot eat that food in that school. Because the cafeteria on the contract with Cisco, you can't much use a fork out of that cafeteria. So you got to go back to the school board and state legislature to free up all of that and able to. But to me, is I don't know where those rules come from. You growing it right there on campus, but you can't eat. We service 5 schools in the city of New Orleans. And when we go there speaking about agriculture, we have a strawberry day, a watermelon day, or peach day, or whatever. We can't even go in the cafeteria. All our activity got to take place outside the cafeteria because it's on the contract with somebody. So my point is that we have to change the whole system. Even now with a farmer, if I want to be a farmer to sell to the school, then I have to have about $900 worth of permits. For that produce to leave my farm and enter into the school. You understand, Mississippi? I got to have the health certificate, I have housing certificate, food safety, all of that. And get my product into a school district. One of the things, my school is a fellow school district, I'm a mentor to the young men when they get completely kicked out for a semester. Like your sister said, it's a program that I have 1 or 2 or 3 a year. So far this year I've been fortunate I don't have any. So that means through my cooperative, you got to come to the cooperative and give 20 hours a week. But we're responsible for getting to the after school programs, and we still have to track it for a whole year after you go through that program. It works fine sometimes it don't. For the last 2 I had, they were determined to get back to their father in East St. Louis. So we eventually took up enough money and bought them 2 bus tickets. That's how bad they were. At least they thought they were bad, be 13, 14 years old. So
Speak up so we
I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna quit talking at my coworkers. I said, well, I'm a mentor in a school district, fellow school district, when a young male, I just deal with male. Most is one-on-one at a time. Get completely kicked out for the semester. And I'm 20 hours a week working in the field and doing something in the community for elder people. You got to give us 20 hours a week. But my first rule when you come to me, the ball game changed. You can get knocked down here. There ain't no consummate rule. That's the first rule we get. The first day we get the understanding from now. So what I have some in the army, I have some went on to college. some Washington City's lifetime in prison. But it's a very unique program. I can talk to you a little more about how it works.
Everybody's always hurrying me up. Everywhere I go. But I'm going to make this clear. I'm sure all of us biblical scholars are more than aware of something called famine. It has been predicted that America is definitely due for its famine, and no matter how much food you have stored in your warehouse, someone is going to come and kill you for that food. That's what a famine is. We all need to learn to grow our food, because those of us who have food, our lives are in danger. So it's pretty important that we learn to grow food. I work with Tougaloo College. I love going to their gardens. But the farmer, one of the farmers, said that that is the present for America. That's the present America. We will be in danger if we have food and others don't. Thank you.
Oh, you're great. Thank you. So thank you all so much. Most of you I get to hear all the time, so it's a blessing to see you. So I guess there's two things I want to say. One, actually, a lot of people call me the young person, so I work with a lot of young people. And I think a lot of people ask questions of why can't young people do this, why don't they do that, without actually really questioning about their parents and grandparents. Right? So a lot of our folks decided if they were too good for things, and they rose up, and then they taught young people, this is what you don't do. So then they get mad at young people for not doing the thing that they decided they didn't want them to do. So really it's like, actually, maybe we need to go talk to some old people. Because I'm just saying it, because I think we play the blame game with young people, and that has to stop. It just really does have to stop. Like, people decide, you are born where you're born. Like, my family went to ski. My parents went to ski. When they worked in the laundry room, they did the laundry, they did the food. I had a garden when I grew up. We had a farm. I worked on it. It was a lot of hard work. And I just want to say that to Ms. Blunt. It's hard work. So a lot of times things get romanticized. And I think the thing you said around what it takes to do it is real. And we gloss over that. And so then people get to do it, and they're like, well, hold on, I don't understand why I can't make it. I got $10 and it's not working. And so I think the piece around how do you actually get enough capital or resources, even in a non-capitalist thing, capital is a thing, right? That's where we're in. How you make it happen. One thing I want to lift up, we're running a fellowship program, and we took some young people that do work around food through a distribution center, and to talk to them about logistics, because they all work in rural areas. And I want to say logistics is a major, major problem. Major problem. And they're like, how do I get my food from way over here to a city if there is no city near me? And they were astounded to be like, oh, I didn't actually realize you needed all this certification, all these refrigeration, all this stuff. Oh, hold on. Maybe this is a bigger thing than I thought. And so then they had thought, oh, maybe I need a brand. Oh, a brand, yes. Producer co-ops can come together as a brand. And so I just want to say all that because I think things get glorified and gets real simple, but it's actually not that simple. It's actually bigger, and there's layers. And I think, and I guess part of me is saying that because I feel like, and I just want to hear your comments. I'm young, but I've been doing this for 20 years and young, and with my family for a long time. And I think part of the thing that I see, at least, as what been taught to us, is that a lot of people that are doing co-op work and co-op development work are really good on the social justice tip. We are really great at the analysis, sometimes, mostly. We are really good at discussion. We have lots of meetings. We're real good at the meetings. We're not good at business plan development. We are not good at actually getting anything started on the ground. We have a hard time focusing on one thing and seeing that thing through. Constant expansion isn't doing 5 things, doing one thing and then expand, right? And we have a hard time, and I'm saying this because I think it's one of the lessons we are not actually imparting to people. So we impart to young people how to facilitate, how to argue, how to debate. We don't impart how do you actually run something for real. And so I would love to hear from you all's perspective and people who've done this for a while. Like, I do my own thing at home. I don't live in Jackson. My family's from Nashville, but I live in Tennessee. But I would love to hear from you all's perspective. What does that mean? And what can that happen in schools? because I think some of it's got to actually get in the public education system, and it has to actually go through a different process. And then, if you could please share a little bit, because I know you said you were going to talk about it, but instead you imparted us with a lot of great history around some of the legislative work y'all are trying to do, because I think that could really help, and also what else is happening with co-ops in Mississippi. Thank you.
Well, I'll talk about the legislative part, and I can talk about the older people part too. You want me to?
You're my elder, you know.
Okay.
Matriarch.
Yeah. But one thing that I do say about those, that those who, we need to speak, I said this before in another conference, we need to speak into young people's lives. We need to talk what it is that we believe and that we know works and that we're concerned about. And it will resonate with them. I'm here to tell you that. You know, you see somebody, I work around youth too. They come where I work. And I'm always speaking into their lives. You know, I'm saying, well, what does your father do? What are you going to be doing? What are you going to do when you graduate from high school? And then you say, well, my father's an electrical engineer, and I'm going to do that. Well, they're taking patterns after us, and so we have to watch how we walk. Are we walking in the right way ourselves as older people? Are we doing that? Watch that, because they're doing it. No matter what you say, no matter I'll tell you all this later outside. But no matter how you say this, your children and children around you are watching you, and they're going to emulate you. And when they get older, they're going to say that. Like my mother, I'm doing some of the things she did. You know that. Y'all all know that, right? I may not do everything she did, but I'm doing some of the things she did. You know. But anyway, so I just encourage us to walk upright. Okay. And when you see a person that's not walking upright, you don't have to beat them down. You just take them to the next level. If they're doing this, you're going to say, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. No, let me show you something that's going to get you somewhere. You encourage them, a motivator, encourage, educate, too. So let me get on to the legislative process. I love doing that. I love motivating and educating my young people and talking with them. But here in Mississippi, you heard me talk about agricultural cooperatives. That's all I talked about. 1936, 1939, there was some agricultural cooperatives. There was some doing something. As far as the legislation here in Mississippi is concerned, you can only incorporate agricultural cooperatives in this state. And that's not only in Mississippi, it's most of the southern states are like that. And if you want to incorporate a cooperative, you must go outside of this state to do that. Some Rainbow, we know about that. The Whole Food Cooperative went to Wisconsin and was incorporated there. And I had a gentleman, a gentleman that worked with cooperatives I was talking about earlier today, and he told me, he said, well, you know, just do it. Let's go outside and incorporate and come on back. I said, okay. It is a hardship for some people to do it. You have to have an attorney there and an attorney here, right, to do the legal papers for that. And you have to pay some fees there and pay some fees here. So it does put a hardship on some people for that. But I also said this. I said, this is my state, and my state should come and do some of the things I wanted to do for me and other people who are interested in this matter. So we should work to get our state to change, not for us to have to go through all these other things just to get done what we want to done. So I'm a stickler for that, and I'm a stick. So we've introduced legislation for the last 4 years, and as Chuck has said, you don't mind me calling you that?
No problem. Pretty much
has said that you know, it's hard to get something done here in this state because of the climate that we're, political climate that we're in. But that doesn't mean that we have to stop working at it. And we've been working for this piece of legislation to open up the cooperative law, to expand it to include any other type of cooperative you want to organize and incorporate in this state. So that's our piece of legislation. And let me say now that it is right up there now in the legislative session. Our session started in January and it's going through March. So I need as much help to call your representative and your senator and tell them that this bill, this cooperative bill, is in judiciary A. Oh, I'm so happy. It moved from B to A this time. And the reason being is B was a man who turned it down every year, wouldn't let it come out of his committee. So it's in another committee this year. And I think we've made a step forward because we have some key people on there that we know. And so, too. So this is not only an issue for Mississippi, it's for the southern states, too. And I think the Co-op Econ is working on this, right? Okay. And so, and looking at other states too, because people wanting to do worker-owned cooperatives, they want to do consumer cooperatives, they want to do other types of housing cooperatives. So we can't do that unless we go out of state and be incorporated and come back. So this is a key bill if we're talking about co-ops in the city of Jackson, in the state. It's a key bill. I just forgot it. But if you, I do have the bill number. I looked it up. But if you go on the Mississippi State Legislature and then you pull down a bill by author, is John Horn, Senator John Horn, H-O-H-R-N. So look for that bill number. And I don't have the bill number in the House yet, but it hasn't come out. But we'll have that too. So, but my only thing is, Judge Zippert is the person that worked with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, and some of you may know him. But it took 10 years to get housing in Epps, Alabama. He didn't stop. 10 years. So I think we only put 4 in. We got 6 more. So we'll make it.
So going to your question about the business side. Ms. Burkett, Bibercat, and Melville, they've been working on this for as long as I've known, right? So they can tell you about existing cooperatives that are actually doing stuff in the state. They can also tell you about great efforts that failed miserably in the state. There was one set of farmers in the Delta, northern part of the Delta, and they got money and they built a huge processing facility. And then they fell out. And then somebody took the key. And the building sat dormant for about 3 years. Finally, they got the key again and they act like they want to do something. Another effort. Ms. Burkett was helping a group of farmers in Milestone. Melville talked about it started in 1944. Did all kinds of stuff, trained them for a conference, but he could never get them to really sit down and put together a plan to move forward. Well, I thought I was going to do something, and maybe 10 years later, same group of farmers in Milestone, brought them together, got to talk about the business side and say, if you're a cooperative, where's your corporation? If you don't have it, I continue to work with them. Found money for them to build a processing facility. Found a market to receive the goods. They could never get together to sit down and come up with a plan, and the money's still sitting there waiting for them now for one over 3 years. So the concept of doing a cooperative is a great concept in theory. But in practice, Mel said it earlier, you have to get people who are truly willing to work with one another. And that, though, it doesn't matter whether it's a food cooperative, a construction cooperative, you go down the line. Because as soon as individuals see they can have an edge on everybody else, and they don't have the best character, You know, some people are characters, other people have bad character, and you got to distinguish between the two. It implodes. So as we think through this process, we have to be careful that we have the right education components in place, that we recognize that the nature of human beings sometimes take hold, that we look at best practices and models to implement, but also learn from failed experiments because those are the best teachers, and understand that although we would like to see the best, sometimes the best don't happen, but that only creates an opportunity for us to do something different. It is great to see the new energy around this. And I was talking to Hollis Watkins earlier. We had a school called Black and Proud. Black and Proud School was, I don't know what grade it went to, all of the food, 6th grade. Thank you, Kathy. All of the food was grown by what now we call an urban farm or farmers who donate. Women used to make quilts to sell to help support the school. I mean, Spencer Howard was way before his time on this. There's a lot of history in this community we call Jackson that we need to go deep on because it's not documented. Nobody's not going to write about the successful revolutionary work that was done. It is for us to go and glean that information from all those warriors, many of whom are still alive today, and understand how they move the needle. And some of those experiments that were cooperative, they existed for many years. But when the primary organizers either got tired or died down, they kind of went out. We got a lot of rich information here in this community. Let's learn from that as we rebuild. And you know, legislation being passed is great, but that don't stop a cooperative from being organized. Because any entity can incorporate. You ain't got to call it a cooperative, but you can still be working cooperatively, and you design your bylaws so you can do that.
I just want to say one thing on, about the cooperative too. Yes, you can, and I agree with you there too, but there, getting an incorporation paper or getting a charter to do business in this state doesn't make a cooperative. See, don't run down to the state and say, I want to form a cooperative and get you a piece of paper. That doesn't make a cooperative. You need to take time. We do training, being knows this, we take training. It may take a year to 2 years till you get ready to go down to the state of Mississippi to get your form of paper. You need to learn how to work together. What's your vision? What's your goal? That's why some of our cooperatives fail. They come to us being and say, oh, I want to form a cooperative. I heard about a cooperative. I want to form it. No, go back and do due diligence as you talked about. Go back and do work. Go back and find out who wants to go through the long haul with what we're talking about. You see what I'm saying? That's why, and then it's a bad name for cooperatives because they don't work. They do work if you work it the right way. And that is, you have to get people on the same page and start walking together, and then you can go somewhere. But if you got one over here, he's arguing, or he's no, we don't do this, that's not going to work. It's for 2 years, it'll be dead. So the paper doesn't make a cooperative. Getting incorporated, getting a charter does not make to be what you should be. Okay?
So first, I got passed the paper. This is the Senate Bill 2749. Also, I was on a farm. My grandma had a farm. I didn't work hard on it. I just picked blackberries. No, I did. And watched chickens get their hair cut off. That was, I remember that. So I'm not sure what my question is. It's kind of connected to a lot of what folks think. It's two parts. First is, so I feel like part of the challenge that we face in this kind of work is how we define or identify success in the United States, right? And to what extent cooperation isn't even an appealing value in an environment where individualism, right, and doing it on your own is really what is lifted up. And that's one of the things I really appreciated about this motion, is it's challenging the country nationally in a place where a lot wouldn't expect it to sort of look at that as a possibility. But, you know, there's still the pushback around what is success. I look at this just in terms of $1 million, right? So I get $1 million. I could split that with 20 people and we could all have 50,000. But when you see me, I'm not going to look like a quote unquote success, right? I'm not going to have all the nice things that come as a result of keeping that $1 million and having the visible view of a success, right? And I think about that movie, I think Malcolm X, right? Brother Baines, right? Or people want to see us look successful, right? Like he was even in there, it was in Malcolm X, right? That's the reality that we have to look apart and be apart. And what does that have to do exactly with the value of cooperation, right? And so I guess really just in, you know, you spoke to some of, just in terms of what being a savvy business person is, right? Because even within the concept of being a savvy business person, there's this view you're supposed to have, this image you're supposed to project of what being successful in business is. I don't, you know, there are people who have billions of dollars dressed like slobs, right? You never know. They do that on purpose, right? It doesn't keep you from asking them for money, right? And then you have people who are broke who want to look rich and really can't even afford the shoes they have on right now, right? You know, so I mean, just in terms of really lifting up the spirit of cooperation, how important do you see defining or redefining success so that we are all in it, as opposed to just one or a few of us? Okay.
Well,
I think we need it.
can we?
I had something I wanted to say, but most of it escaped me. Well, I'd say that, you know, first of all, to the question of how we define success, I think in large part, you know, you said, how do we define success in America? That's a heavy question, brother. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, I would personally argue that, you know, I don't know if we're defining it based on American standards or how we define success in our community, right? And I'm going to use kind of another discussion to kind of bring it around to how do we galvanize people behind it, you know. I was talking to a brother in the Malcolm X grassroots movement, and we were talking about how organizers or activists are always trying to organize people behind things, right? And people don't really seem interested until that big occurrence, right? Until that Mike Brown or some other situation. And what we joked about, we said, you know what? Oppression is the greatest organizer out there, right? So what you need to really open people's eyes to is the circumstances around them, right? And if you educate, motivate, and organize, and you educate them to, you know, look at your conditions, right? Look at your conditions, and everything everybody's been trying to tell you, has it really been benefiting where you are, right? Has it been benefiting your condition right now, you know? And so once you start to really, you know, open those things up and take the time, part of it is we don't take the time to really have these discussions. We don't take the time to come into the Lumumba Center for, you know, Lumumba Center to talk about these things, right? And so this is a start to the process, and kind of touching on what the sister said, and kind of lost who it was at this point, you know, about things that kind of fall by the wayside. I believe it's the sister right here in front of me. Well, first of all, part of the process is taking, you know, we're talking about economic democracy and cooperation. We need to take our collective genius, right, and utilize that. Utilize the talents and abilities we have, right? We're talking about we need attorneys here. I see a few attorneys in this room right now, right? We need to utilize our skill set in order to make that happen, and understand that it's not an overnight process, right? Anything worth having ain't overnight, right? Anything worth having ain't overnight.
And I think I would just like to add to that, just in the redefinition of success and understanding that there's not ever going to be one carte blanche definition. It's not always going to fit into one thing. So for me, tonight is a success. And it makes me feel good. And it gives me the strength to go tomorrow.
And can I just, and I think, you know, first of all of the comments that have been made about what has been attempted in the past and has not succeeded, and the things where they fall, that's a part of this process, right? We're not just here to, you know, feel good and say, you know, this is a good idea and everybody's in agreement, right? We need that very tough discussion, right? If we're going to have any real chance for success, right? And so that's how we open it up. And I think, you know, if people feel in this audience right now that, you know, feeding the community, right? Feeding the children, we talked about not only, you know, producing it as a cash crop, but actually having the children eat it for themselves, right? If you feel like that ain't success for you, then we need you to say that, right? We need you to be real and say, I don't see that as success. I need something to line my pocket really heavy for it to be successful for me, right? And so you need to say that so we got an understanding of where people stand, where the community stands on the issue.
My name is Reginald Jr., and I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. And we came down, I'm with a grassroots organization called Stand with Dignity. And we came down to do some lessons for y'all, but anyway, I'm gonna say this here. I plant tomatoes, I plant sweet potatoes, I plant arbor potatoes, I plant poultry, I plant everything. You understand? But my concern is this here. We got all these big old, I say that word, people building all these big old hotels down in New Orleans. We have 52% of black males is not working. No unemployed, not just walking the street, not doing anything. And what my say so is sure, I would like to, you know, people to hear me out about getting the blacks, some of the black guys and white jobs in the city of New Orleans, you know, and mostly the fast food workers. But the fast food worker can't send the kids to college for $7.25 an hour. You know what I'm saying? We need a living wage in that's around the country. Mostly everywhere else in California and places like that, they get $33 an hour for fast food like working at McDonald's or Burger King or Popeye's chicken. And so what I'm saying, my concern is we need a living wage around across the board. We need a living wage because we can't pay no rent for no $7.25 an hour. We need a living wage where we can pay, you know, have money able enough to send our kids to college. That's all I have.
If I may say that one of the things that I think that we're focusing on here is true redefinition of economic democracy. And that is taking responsibility and onus in our own hands for providing the needs for us and redefining what those needs look like and what the answers should be. So eventually, and this is not something that's going to happen overnight, but we get to redefine what economics are. We get to redefine what currency is. We get to redefine, again, what success is. So you make shoes, I grow beans. You need some beans, I need some shoes. We don't need money.
We don't.
We don't need to continue to fall into that erroneous understanding of what it takes to live. We begin to redefine that. And it's not even a redefinition, it's a re-embracing of an old understanding that we begin to relive. So, I'm usually wordy, but not tonight.
let me also, that was wonderfully played. That was wonderfully stated. One of the things, you know, that we talk about in the African American community, black community, right? The black community is that yeah. In the black community, we talk about what great consumers we are in the country, right? We're some of the largest consumers in the country, right? And we take that as pride. And, you know, when we talked about Black Friday this year, some people made a concerted effort to use that, right? The reason that we're some of the greatest consumers, right, and why poor people are some of the greatest consumers is because we don't produce anything, right? If you don't produce, some people who have, tremendous wealth, they don't really have to consume much because they're producing everything that they need, right? Everything that they need is with them, right? And so if we start producing things, producing our needs, right, we may not, and you talked about New Orleans, and the way I see New Orleans is much like, I see Jackson as being in jeopardy with me, right? New Orleans is an island of wealth surrounded by a sea of poverty, right? Surrounded by a sea of poverty, right? And so if you can start putting into practice, a mentality and a system where right there in your seat, right there in your community, you're producing everything you need, then that island starts to notice, right? They start realizing that you're not really consuming everything you need, right? And that's why, we're talking about, somebody just about mentioned that S word earlier, that socialism word, right? and we talked about.
I thought she did.
Yeah, you thought she did. But we've also, we've talked about the fact that not only Mississippi, but southern states, do not allow for the incorporation of cooperatives. This stuff isn't by mistake, y'all. Right? It isn't by mistake. I mean, we keep uncovering. We keep saying what we're not saying, right? And it's all about, the exploitation of community, right? And so we understand it's not easy, right? We understand that many things fall by the wayside, and many projects, they initiate, but they never really take off like they should, right? But we have to understand these challenges if we're really gonna have any true level of success. Yeah.
I'd first like to give kudos to the city because there is a functioning urban garden community in that. And you can give them credit for it. In fact, I think they're having a meeting maybe next week. We all get together. I think, and this is something that I really give, again, to in the Bible there. I've been in first fruit. January is our first fruit month. Glad I could come tonight. The rest of the week, the church was at church. But the thing was kingdom recovering faith. It's going to take faith to accomplish what most of us desire here tonight. And it's going to take a concept, a paradigm, me changing my paradigm from self to kingdom. It's not about me. And in that respect, you have to build, institutions are composed of people. And I like what the man of God says that you have to build the people first. It's not about the building. And it's not so much about the numbers because God will make numbers. He's not looking for large numbers. So that to satisfy anybody asking questions in the small group. He makes the numbers count. 2 made it in. Joshua. I started out, and I know that you have to build people, and I've met several people here, this gentleman, because I, by the grace of God, took the initiative, and I had to be the spirit. I read about the garden at Tupelo College was looking for volunteers in the free press. Thank God for the free press. I get my news there. But my involvement in this has been has revolutionized my thinking. And I started out with that garden. That was a grant, I believe, between the Rainbow Cooperative and the Tupelo College. And it's on the campus there. And I just simply saw the announcement in the paper and said, we're looking for volunteers to learn about organic gardening. And I've been moving ever since and meeting people. Friday, I took my first hours off. And there's a lot more involved here than you would think. I know the lady who said about the wanting to get the children involved. There are a number of gardens already operative in the city. One little group, and I found out that economic sustainability is a much larger term than I envisioned as well.
after hearing Mr. Burkett, Dr. Eichert, a professor from University of Missouri, at the Mississippi Food Summit. I never would have gone there had I not been involved in the project which I am involved in. I've also joined this one as well. And it really brings it in. Sustainability is, I believe it has to start with people. People are not being sustained because we're not cooperating. It's economics, but it's also the development of people as people, individuals. You know, I find my wholesomeness, and I think what we're saying about these children, whatever, in my involvement with the ground. And I saw even bringing the community together. Now, when I started at that garden, the facilitator was a gentleman, white gentleman, Madison, from the survey. Okay, well, the guy, and I never would have met this little family. He had 2 children probably born out there while I've been volunteering out there, but in that garden. And he would, but I saw those children learn. I saw learning at its best when that child is involved with the environment, with that physical environment. Many of you know that campus in history is a plantation. His little daughter can take a root there. When I joined, her daddy was hewing out the hiking trail, and she can take any of these adults on a tour there. And I learned the essence of education. You know, you're learning from your environment. But I just want to say this, that it's a lot more involved than what you would think. It's economics, but the only way I think for that to be realized is that people have to have a concept of a kingdom mentality. Now, I got it by way of his word, and I thought I knew some stuff. But unless we have a transitioning of the mind of the people, then institutions and groups don't function very good. But I believe that that's what's going to have to happen. And I think we do that by meeting people. Friday, I went up to demonstration forum. Mr. Burkett, you might want to say something about demonstration forum. There's a lot of information. Alcorn was there. Mississippi State was there, giving information. And that's what made me realize that it's a community. It's a community of different groups. And some groups you wouldn't think they would be a part of it, but they are. But,
yeah. Just to respond to your statement, sister, I agree with you that you know. Well, first of all, I believe in the Matthew 6:33 life. Seek first the kingdom and its righteousness, and provide all these things unto you. But I also think, you know, in terms of a biblical understanding, that's what we're talking about. I think it's consistent with what Scripture teaches, right? I think in order to be blessed, the requirement is that you be a blessing, right? Yeah, to be a blessing, right? So when we ask for something, we're asking for, what we're doing is we're asking for not. I don't think anybody's sitting in here so that, you know, you individually make a lot of money. If you are, you're in the wrong meeting. You're in the wrong meeting. But we're talking about community wealth building. So it's putting the we before I. I'm a bit distracted. Let me.
A newbie in the room. I don't know if you all have ever heard that term. I am a raw newbie. I know absolutely squat about corporations. Nothing do I know about a corporation. So here it is. I'm here, and I had a concept after, you know, coming in, and I was kind of under the impression that it was, you know, us just agreeing to come together to accomplish some great goals, you know.
we set some things and decide that some things are important that we can do, and then we get busy doing those things. But I'll be perfectly honest with you. I just don't understand what politics and the legislation and any of that has to do with me eating maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the line. You all touched on some of it, but that baffles me. How do we have to do it? Does it just have to go? I mean, I'm tired of asking for every little thing. Well, I'm going to ask to breathe and to blink. It's almost sitting, it's mind-boggling. You know, how much we have to ask for everything. Are we free? No.
I think our facilitator's gone. Oh, second.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Harold Blaketon. I'm from a little small town in northeast Mississippi, Westport, Mississippi, very rural. Many times had to take out beagle dogs and a couple of shotgun shells and go out and hunt for my breakfast, kill a couple of rabbits and bring them back for him. And as you can tell, I was a pretty good shot. I say that to say that what we hear, most of what I was going to say, you guys kind of eventually kind of covered it. But to the young lady's point, self-sufficient economic empowerment. Okay, that acronym is SEN, the vision, that the matriarch quote, integration, broke the village concept. And so we as a race of people were prepared to do what it was or whatever it took to survive pre-integration. We're living in a post-integration environment with technology and our global economy. And so it's going to change the whole paradigm. But we've got to be in a position now to try to create this new enclave. And so one of the things I respected so very much about your father is the bridge of the student of the game, which I pride myself in for the last 22, 23 years. But I could not fathom having a degree from Mississippi State University in banking and finance, and understanding that we as a race of people were spending $500 to $800 billion a year in this country, yet we still hovered at the bottom or near the bottom of the economic comparative poll. That's every single year. And I said, now if I gave my brother $500 million every year for the last 20 years, one of the times I got to stop and say, what you do with the $500 million I gave you last year? To your point, brother, is we are the purest consumers. Okay? We are the purest consumers. And so, again, being a student of the game, you got to take it one step further. And so just for thinking, and tomorrow is going to be very exciting for those of you who plan to come back for tomorrow. Because what we're going to look at is digging a little bit deeper. We're going to look at the African American disposable income. What actually makes it up? And where do we as a race of people actually fit into that model so we know exactly what businesses we need to be getting into? See, it's one thing to say, okay, well, I know Harold, he's a barbecue guy, you know, I'm smarter than him, so I'm going to go into the barbecue business. Okay, I know John, he's a farmer, we all do farmers. But it's the global economy and technology now has changed that. Point is simple, and then I'm going to close with one definition. Again, that the father just laid on my heart. And I can't tell you just how much I respect the late, great Chokwe Lumumba, man. I believed in him. I believed in him with all my heart, man. Okay? And I say that not only because of his notoriety, man, but he did put the people first.
Yes.
He put the people first every single time.
Yes.
And so we as a race of people, what are we prepared to do?
Mm-hmm.
We say by any means necessary, but what are we really prepared to do? Now, again, like I said, tomorrow's going to be very exciting. But a study of 3 common categories: construction, professional services, and commodities. That's it. I'm telling you, as a student of the economy, there's nothing else from a consumer perspective, and the African American disposable income or any nationality disposable income is only 3 categories: construction, professional services, and commodities. Commodities is food, ink pen, gasoline, anything that can be used up. That's a commodity. Professional service, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're an attorney, that's professional service. Construction speaks for itself. It's only 3. But one city, one aim, one destiny, I like to add one other comment. There's only one community. If you just bear with me 1 second, I want to etymologize that word community. If you look at the prefix of the word community, you get the common, same, similar, like. Pre-integration, we didn't have to worry about it because we had to depend on ourselves. Post-integration, Fair Street down, white folks didn't stop coming to Fair Street, they didn't go there in the first place. We had a chance to go out and do different. Okay, but that's because we're living in a global economy. That's because of technology. We can shop online. A good example is I'm not going to pass a dry cleaner owned by a white person to drive 3 miles to go to a black-owned dry cleaner. Not if they're giving me good quality customer service and a good price. I can't do it. The price of gas won't let me do that. Now, for a good slab of ribs, I may buy pass and go that because that's my utility that I want. That's what I'm prepared to. Purest consumers. That's what I want to do. That's what I got an opportunity to do. So that common, same, similar, like. Okay, what is it going to cause us to do that? Okay, homogenous. When you look at the root of that word, community, unity is what you get. Togetherness. Common, togetherness, unity. If you further break down the word unity, and you look at the suffix of the word ty, that's to the highest degree. I want to do it to the T. The common, same, similar, like, togetherness to the highest degree. When we look at the prefix of the word unity, you get uni, singular. And ebonically speaking, what you're going to be looking at those first 3 letters, that's what it's going to take. U-N-I, working together. But I want to expand upon what we're really trying to do here. We can't talk our way into self-sufficient economic empowerment. In the city of Jackson, we got to follow the money. And then we put in the strategic implementation action plan that ensures the self-sufficient economic empowerment. So we just don't go out doing this business. It may be successful, but it's not a demand generator. And I'm going to close with this. And you're talking about the faith-based institutions. The black churches in the city of Jackson deposit $12 million on average every Monday morning, like clockwork. Like clockwork. 12 million? That's 48, 50 million a month. That's over 600 million a year. We got over $386 million down there in Trustmark Bank right now on any given day of the city's money. What are we as a race of people prepared to do? So I'll close with that to say tomorrow we're going to get very strategic. We're going to get very creative. But we're going to do it from a perspective that makes sense, that makes self-sufficient economic empowerment for the people.
Right now.
Thank you.
Right now.
So do we have closing comments that we would like to give before?
I think he did.
Okay, I think he did it too.
I want to get to these red beans and rice that I've seen everybody.
Right, okay. All right, for those of you who have not eaten, please make sure that you eat. Someone asked the question about leaving donation for food. If you'd like, donation for anything, right here. And again, please review the agenda and come prepared for discussion tomorrow so that we can be strategic. Thank you. Also, please make sure you sign in so you have everyone's information.